Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Play. I've got Blue Lagoon, the new Reiner Knizia game from Blue Orange, and I'm going to walk you through the setup and the rules for the game. In Blue Lagoon, we take on tribes populating a newly discovered archipelago. The game is for 2 to 4 players and takes roughly half an hour to an hour to play. It says 8 and up on this box, but I would say it really depends on the mental maturity of your players. Some adults will find this game brings out their inner child, and not in a good way. There are many ways to score points while settling this new archipelago, but we're all going to be vying for territory and control as we make tactical decisions about the best way to score points. Now, this is a prototype copy I've got, so it's going to differ slightly from the final game copy you'll get. So here in the box for Blue Lagoon, we've got a score pad. Now you'll need this, and it also acts as a reference for the ways in which we can score points. So set this to one side of the board where everybody can see it. And then I've got player bags, one for each player color. We've got tokens. Now, in your copy of the game, these are going to be wooden tokens, but they perform the exact same function as these prototype paper tokens. And then we've got this game board, and that's it. Those are all the components we need to play. So then you're going to take your game board and just set it up in the middle of the table where everybody can reach it. Now you'll notice that there are 8 islands that make up the archipelago, and each island is worth a number of points. That's important. Next, give each player one of these player baggies. In the player baggie, you will find 30 settler tokens, which are double-sided, and 5 villages. So these settler tokens have a land side and a seaside. And the village tokens are little wooden houses. In a 2-player game, you'll play with all 30 settler tokens. In a 3-player game, each player puts 5 of them back in the box, and in a 4-player game, you each put 10 back in the box. Once each player set up their settlers and their village tokens around the board, then you can take these resource tiles. There are 4 resource types in the game, as well as idols. The 4 resource types are precious stone, coconuts, bamboo, and water. Now, in your copy, you will have 6 wooden tokens, each representing one of these resources. For example, the bamboo is the little yellow stick, and the precious stone is the green wooden token that looks like a flame. You'll also have wooden idol tokens, which are the little scarlet ones. Now, you should have 8 idol tokens. In your final production copy, you'll also have a linen bag, which I don't have. You can take all of your wooden pieces and put them into the linen bag. Give them a shake, because now we're going to be distributing them randomly onto the board. So go into your bag and take out a random token. What we're going to be doing is populating these stone circles with the different resources. So just take the random wooden token you've drawn and put it onto one of the stone circles like this. When you set the board up in this way, it will be set up in such a way that all of the spaces will be populated. So I'm going to do that now. Now that our archipelago is populated with resources, we're ready to move into the first phase of the game. So let's move into gameplay. Blue Lagoon is a game won by the player who has the most points at the end of the game. There are 2 phases. The first phase is the settlement phase, in which our tribes move into the archipelago and populate it, and the second phase is the exploration phase, in which we move out again and explore our new home. Now, this is an abstract game, and that's a fancy way of saying there are 2 scoring rounds. You'll be able to score the full cadre of points in both rounds, and at the end of the game, you will be totaling your score from both rounds to find out who the winner is. What this means is that there's no end game scoring, which only applies at the end of the game, but each round is scored fully, and then you have a total score at the end. In the settlement phase, the youngest player will go first. The game is played in very quick turns. Each player just places 1 token on the board on their turn, and then it's the next player's turn. So it's very rapid around the table. We'll take turns placing one of our settler tokens down on the board in turn order, continuing this until either all of the green tokens, or in the case of your retail copy, all of the wooden resource tokens have been collected from the board, or all of their players have run out of all of their settler tokens, which does not include villager tokens. Once one of these two conditions is met, the round is over, it will be scored, and then we'll move into the exploration round. During the settlement round, you'll be putting your settlers on the board one at a time, taking turns with the other players. You can put your water settlers anywhere on the board. That is to say, they can go in any water space that you want. But your land settlers, these chaps, now remember these are double-sided and you can choose which one you want them to be, can only be placed next to your water settlers. And this represents your settlers arriving in the archipelago and beginning to settle on the land. When you put a land settler down on a resource tile, you collect that tile. When you collect a resource tile, just put it down next to your player area and keep it face up because everybody should be able to see what you've collected at all times. You also have these villages. These villages represent where you're going to settle permanently, and you'll place them during the settlement phase to create permanent settlements for your tribe. For all intents and purposes, they act exactly the same as land-dwelling settlers. That is to say that you can put them down on the board, and then you can put other land settlers next to them. You can also put your villages down on resource tiles or idols in order to collect them. However, this is not an optimal use of your villages because they're going to be very important in the next stage, the exploration phase, and any villages you place on the stone circles are going to be taken off of the board before the exploration phase takes place. So there are 6 ways to score in this game, and this is what you've got to keep your mind on at all times. The first way to score is by being present on 7 or 8 of the 8 islands. That is, at the end of the phase, you want to have a settler on each of the 8 islands. That's 20 points. If you missed an island and you only got 7 presence on 7 islands, that's still 10 points. If you only got 6 islands, that's no points. This is a big deal because 10 and 20 points is quite a lot of points. Note that your water settlers do not contribute to this. So while putting down a lot of water settlers allows you to expand out and get next to the tiles that you might want to collect, if you don't put out your land settlers on the islands, you're going to miss out on this scoring. The next way to score is by chains. What you're going to do is at the end of the game, you're going to look at your longest consecutive chain of people. Now, obviously, your settlers on the islands originate from the settlers in the boats. So you put down a settler in a boat, and then you can spread onto the islands through the spaces adjacent to the settler in the boat. But ideally what you want to do is create a really long chain of settlers across the map, collecting tiles as you go, because at the end of the game, you're going to look for your longest unbroken chain of settlers, count the number of islands it crosses, and score 5 points for each island covered by that chain. Each player will do this, so this isn't the player with the longest chain. Each player looks at their longest chain. However, because everyone's trying to create long chains that crisscross and can be broken by other people's settlers, if you capture this space early on, you will easily block your opponents and force them to make suboptimal small chains. At the end of the game, you might have an island that looks a bit like this. Now this island is worth 10 points, and we can see that each island has a numerical value associated with it that indicates how many points that island is worth. During the scoring at the end of the phase, what we'll do is we'll count up the number of settlers on each island, and then we'll score based on who has the most settlers there. This is population scoring. Now in this case, yellow has 8, orange has 5, and blue has 7. So yellow wins this island, which means they're going to score 10 points. All of the islands will be scored during the end phase scoring in this way, and so there's potential to pick up a lot of points if you've put out your populations efficiently among the islands. This is another opportunity for you to lose by putting out too many water settlers, because although the water settlers will help you make those chains and get to different areas, for every settler you put down in the water, you're missing an opportunity to put a population down on an island. In the event that 2 or 3 players have tied for the most population on an island, simply split the points equally among the tied players. You're also going to score points for the sets of resources you have. The bamboo here is worth 0 points. You get 0 points for a 1 icon set. These precious stones are worth 5 points. You get 5 points for a 2-icon set. Then for the coconuts here, you get 10 points for a 3-icon set. And for the water, you're going to get 20 points because you got 4 icons in the set. There's a bonus 10 points if you got 1 icon from each of the 4 resource types. This is only scored once, so it doesn't matter if you complete this objective more than once, you're only going to get 10 points for having 1 of each. Finally, each idol you have is worth 4 points. So count up your idols, multiply it by 4, that's how many points you got. So that's how you do the scoring at the end of the phase. You've got just those 6 methods for scoring, which is presence on islands, the number of islands in your longest chain, the population of the islands, the sets of resources you have, bonus points for 1 complete set of resources, and idols. Once you've totaled everyone's score for that at the end of the settlement phase, you'll move into the exploration phase, wherein it's pretty much the exact same game with 1 key difference. At the end of the first phase, you might have a situation that looks a lot like this. This could very well be the end game board state from a settlement phase. So what you'll do is you'll carry out scoring for the 6 scoring types I just outlined, and then you'll move into the exploration phase. In the exploration phase, you'll collect all the settler tokens and return them to each of the players, but you'll leave the villages on the board. The only villages you'll remove are any that are placed on these stone circles. So, our yellow player has placed 1 village on a stone circle, and that village is going to be lost to them. That it's taken away and put back in the box and can't be used again. All of our other players will collect their settlers back up and return them to their play area. Obviously, you should do this after scoring because you need the villagers on the board to score. Once everyone's collected their villagers back up, they'll take their idol and resource tokens and return them to the linen bag. You will then set them back up again, just like you did at the beginning of the game, so they'll be randomly distributed among the stone circle spaces. So at the beginning of the exploration phase, you'll probably have a situation that looks a lot like this. Our scoring from the first phase of the game, and everybody with their settler tokens. Then all our villagers are on the board, as well as a random distribution of the resources and idols. Now, the beginning player in this phase will be the player to the left of the player who had the last turn in the settlement phase. So that means that the player that ended the last phase will be the last player in this phase. Then the player who goes first, if we say yellow was the last player to play in our settlement phase, orange player must now place settlers next to their villagers. The other key difference is that if we want to put down a water settler, they must be adjacent to a settler on land. So in this phase, instead of coming out of the water settlers in the water spaces, we will be coming out of the villages on the land spaces. That is the key difference, which means that you're going to be learning to live with your strategic placement of villages from the previous phase. I hope you made good choices. Otherwise, it will be exactly the same as the settlement phase, with each player taking 1 turn to play a settler and collecting the tiles as they put pieces down on those spaces. The exploration phase ends exactly the same as the settlement phase, so what that means is that when all of the resource tokens are collected, that is all the ones that aren't idols, or each player has played all of their settler tokens, then the phase will end. Scoring at the end of the exploration phase is exactly the same as scoring at the end of the settlement phase, and once you're done, you just total both scores, and the player with the highest score is the winner. Now, in the event of a tie during the scoring after the second phase of the game, the player who has the most tokens, that is resources and idols totaled, is the winner. And that's it for Blue Lagoon. Those are all of the rules. It's a very simple game to learn, but it's a game that has a lot of strategic depth and can be quite tricky to master. So I hope you find a lot of fun as you block your friends, take what they want, and get away with the most points in the Blue Lagoon. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow with Michael and Ollie to see if we strangle each other trying to make it through this game. So I hope you'll come back and join us for that.